Welcome back and apologies for the late episode of Up in the Blue Seats, your favorite Rangers podcast from the New York Post. As always, it's Mollie Walker, joined by Hall of Famer Larry Brooks and former Ranger Brian Boyle. It's been a pretty hectic schedule, especially with the Rangers coming back from a week-long road trip, only to have a back-to-back at home against the Blue Jackets and then in Montreal against the Canadiens the next night. First things first, though, Brian, I've got to hear, did you light up the Alumni Game?
No, we lost. I didn't have my best stuff. The noon start really got me. It was, you know what, it was so cool to see all the guys, or most of the guys anyways. We're still missing a few, but the night before on Friday, we had dinner. Derek, Stepan, Hanky, and I with our wives had dinner the night before. And then a bunch more guys met at the hotel after dinner, and Saturday morning came fairly quickly for me. I didn't have my best stuff to start the game, but it was really fun. And just like to personally thank Henrik for coming and playing so we could have so many people there cheering us on. But, it was a great time. It was so cool what they did. They raised a bunch of money, the Northwell Health and Garden of Dreams. It was really, really cool to be a part of it. The family had fun too. I had my three oldest down there with my wife, and we got to do some New York City stuff. They had a blast.
Heard you didn't have the puck enough.
I didn't have the puck enough. I need to get the puck. I was trying to be the facilitator. I thought they'd hit me late coming through the slot. They finally did. Brass hit me with a nice drop pass, but yeah.
I really wonder what it's like for guys who are in their first year of retirement, like Step, Brass. Yeah, I just, do you just, can you just go out there and just have fun, when it's so closely removed to competing, maybe in the playoffs or,
Yeah.
I just wonder how that, that transition goes. But obviously I would think if the guys actually wanted to play in it, then they're good with it,
Yeah, I think it's like an all-star game almost. You just kind of feel it out and just kind of cruise around, and then you ramp it up if you're losing. Like Cal Clutterbuck was in camp this year. He was out there just snapping it around.
Right.
But he actually, so you could tell he wasn't going as hard as he could. Some of us towards the end might have been going as hard as we could to just try to get it on the board. But it was, Derek didn't seem overly concerned. It's probably your personality too. Like I think if I'm 50 playing in it, I'll be going as hard as I can.
Yeah.
Did Henrik look as delighted, or was he as delighted as he looked? Because I saw a video of him skate out for the first time, and just the look on his face. It was so wonderful to see. I can't even imagine what it must have been like in person.
I'm not just saying this. He could still play.
Of course he can.
It was ridiculous to watch.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. He, at one point, was like, you're screening me. He's talking to me. And it's glorified men's league. And I'm like, okay, my bad. I'm like, if I stand here, they won't shoot it. That's what men's league is. But he doesn't, he's out of the way. I was like, all right, you got out of the way. Shoot, save. He's trying to get an assist, I think. He was trying to play the puck. It was tremendous.
Love
so
that.
Much fun.
Love that. Glad to hear you had a good time. Another team that had a good time this past week were the Rangers on their West Coast road trip. Really, really strong trip for them. To recap, after they beat the Devils 3-2 in overtime, the Rangers beat the Golden Knights 2-1, picked up a point in a 3-2 overtime loss to the Avalanche, and then beat Utah in Salt Lake City for the very first time by a score of 5-3. I mean, as someone who was there, the difference in the locker room, the feeling in the room around the team is just absolutely astronomical right now. It's so much lighter. The goofiness has returned. The fun has returned. But I mean, that's what winning will do for a team, and that's what the Rangers have been doing. They've got points in 6 straight games. They're back over 500. They're no longer in last place in the Metro, and things are a bit on the ups for them. And I think the players in the room can feel it. What did you guys feel like stood out the most to you about this past week, this road trip that they're coming off of?
Well, I readily admit that I did not think this team had it in them to reverse course so dramatically, just, almost out of nowhere. It was just a running start. And I always go back and, we've talked about this, to when they fell behind 2-0 in Florida after 4.5 minutes. And instead of, turtling the way they had so many games, the previous month, they fought back, and they have, found a purpose. They found an identity. They have rediscovered their work ethic. It looks like they're sacrificing for one another. And it's all about hockey right now. It's not about any of this extraneous matter that actually, I guess, wasn't all that extraneous because it was always in the room. So I think that is behind. I think the noise, has dissipated, and now it's about hockey. They're not playing perfectly. They have some flaws. But I think it's just, all right, this is a credible team once again. And you don't cringe when they, if they give up a goal. You don't expect them to just collapse and give up 3 more. I think they're, they've discovered their meaning almost for the season.
Yeah, they look like a bunch of first-year players almost at one point during the season when anything would happen. Larry, I can't agree more. Like, as soon as, even if they had a good start during that poor stretch, as soon as something didn't go perfectly, it looked like a complete avalanche.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been more resilient. And first 6 weeks of the season, for most of those 6 weeks, they were the worst team in the league. You get to watch all the teams play. They were the worst one. And there's some bad teams in the league right now. And it wasn't because of lack of talent or ability every box is checked in terms of experience, leadership, but it was completely discombobulated. And they've dug themselves out of that, which is really, really impressive.
Yeah.
Are they perfect now? No, they're not. They should have won in regulation in Colorado. There was two plays that I still can't wrap my head around. And I'm not trying to nitpick anything. They were just misses. Like, the first and second goals should not have happened. Complete breakdowns. But, you keep playing. Mika could have won that game in overtime. He's been flying. Mm-hmm. He's moving his legs again. They're going to go, their offense is going to go as far as he takes them, because that's what we've realized. He's a number one, and as good as Artemi Panarin is and that Trocheck line was last year, if Mika's not a threat, everyone falters. And he has been a threat during this stretch of good play. He's been much better. The rest of the team's been elevated too.
It's funny because I don't think I've heard the word resilient once this season until you just said that, Brian, which is crazy because that is a word that, as somebody who writes about the team, I was literally calling them the resilient Rangers for 2 years. It felt like that was their identifier. So the fact that this is the first time that we could describe their play in any which way as resilient is pretty crazy. That it's January 18th and this is the first time we're saying it. But on the flip side, at least we are saying it now, because it was obviously headed in a complete in a nosedive. Well, and it is impressive how they got out of it.
I think to each of your points, that there's a commitment to defend for the first time this year. And again, we know they were 12-4-1, but they weren't defending at all. I mean, that was the dominant theme. Well, they're 12-4-1, but they don't defend. They give up 20 glorious chances a game. And so again, they break down, from time to time. Individuals break down, their coverage, scheme breaks down, but they have a defensive consciousness, at least for the first time, I think. And it's not only on the D, certainly it's on the 5 and probably more on the forwards making it a 5 men in the picture coming back. But I also think that people can hate the Capo Caco trade as much as they want. Honestly, you can hate the Capo journey from beginning to end with the Rangers. You can hate that. But the acquisition of Will Borgen has certainly solidified the back end. I mean, he's part of, I think he's a large part of why they're playing so much better in their own end too. Certainly around the net, and Keandre Miller is now playing, I think has traction for the first time this year, skating with him. So again, you don't have to love, you don't have to love the concept of the Caco trade to acknowledge that Borgan has been a pretty valuable acquisition.
It's just, predictability and physicality. He might have some warts in his game, or did early when he just got here, but there's a lot that goes into getting traded. There's a lot to crossing the country, playing on a completely different team. Who knows if he knew many guys.
First time doing it mid-season for him too.
Yeah, that is, speaking from experience, extremely difficult to do. And even when you love hockey more than almost anything, it's hard to figure out your way. When you're coming to a completely new team, new language, the coaches speak they speak English, obviously, but you know what I'm saying, how they...
The system. He said that it took him. He told me it took a second to get the system down, but he said he felt pretty settled at this point when I talked to him. I think I talked to him in Denver. But I think he's bringing physicality. He's also got a bit of a personality on him. He stopped a 2-on-1 rush at morning skate the other day and holstered the sword and then made everybody laugh. And Keandre told me that he's been hanging out with everybody, playing cards. And it just sounds like he's been a really good addition to the room. But Keandre said that he feels like the fit for him in particular has been tremendous, is the word that he used. And Borgan's blocking shots, he lands hits, he's clearing the front of the Rangers net effectively.
And at the other end, he gets the puck to the net too, which has been a deficiency in the Rangers game for a while. So again, he's he's going to be a subject of a lot of conversation coming up to the trade deadline.
Right.
Is he more valuable as a trade chip, or is he more valuable as an extension? Depending on what he's actually seeking, he's sure making a case for himself to stay in New York. I think so, and I know there's the factor of, well, will he block? Would he block Braden Schneider? Would he block Victor Mancini? And I think no, because we saw at the start of the season that Schneider can be very capable on the left side. And that's exactly what if they would extend Borgan, I would have, Braden Schneider next year, presuming that Ryan Lindgren's not going to be back. There's certainly going to be at least one spot on the left side, maybe a couple open, and that would be my solution. I thought he played extremely well when he was on the left side to start the year. So move him to the left, and so no, he's not going to be blocked by Borgan.
What do you guys think the Rangers should do, and when it comes to Will Borgen, and I guess the overarching question that goes with that is being buyers or sellers at the trade deadline?
That's a lot of what ifs. So you have what you think his value is as a player. Regardless, hopefully no one knows what he's asking for, because then you have more value of what teams, someone calls Chris Drury and says, we want Will Borgen for this push we're going to make. Well, we really like Will. We're thinking of extending him, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's how much can you get back? And that's what Chris Drury's going to have presented in front of him. and now he's operating at a position of strength. So if it ends up that he's dealt, that then Chris Drury got more back for him than he thought he was worth if he kept him. And if it ends up that he stays, and vice versa, he didn't get what he liked and he kept him. You can't dismiss it. Like, there's no small trades. People say that. People's lives get turned upside down when you get traded, especially at the deadline. There's no small trades because Will Borgen doesn't jump off the page at you when he gets dealt here. Capocacco's the story, right? Going the other way. And look at what it's done.
Mm-hmm.
It's a few different. I mean, how much could this potentially be helping what they're doing in practice? If he's a physical presence, how he defends, how he just goes about his reps. Other D can watch that. And it brings us a certain level of energy, and it brings the rest of them up. Like, these things matter, regardless if they're a good fantasy player or not, or you can bet MGM on them or not. Like, that's how you win. It's how you win. This isn't fantasy hockey. It's real hockey, and you need guys that don't have a ton of stats that play well at their job, and then you can gauge their importance that way.
I agree.
I do too. No, I do. It'll be really interesting to see.
I think as the Rangers approach the deadline, they have to be in the seller's mentality. Honestly, they are not a rental piece away from winning the Stanley Cup this year. I mean, they have an opportunity. They have so much cap space. I wrote about this
So much, yeah.
The other day, that they can be the middleman. They can be the banker for 3 separate trades to retain salary, to facilitate deals to clubs that might not have the requisite cap space. So they can pick up maybe 2 or 3 third rounders, a fourth if they're a middleman. And surely, I understand, I talked about the noises behind them, but there's going to be more noise coming at them, but more noise comes at every NHL team when you're coming up to the deadline. So there's going to be a lot about what they should do. It's, names are going to be thrown out there every day. But the Rangers have a responsibility to assemble parts that are going to be on their team when they win the Stanley Cup. That's it. That was it in 2018. That was it in 2019. It should be it now. So Riley Smith's value, I think, has increased. His value to the Rangers has, but his value as a trade chip has. Yeah. I think Ryan Lindgren, to me, is a valuable deadline rental piece. So I don't think the Rangers can be swayed by the last few weeks by the fact that they should be in a playoff race for a stretch. Although we'll get a better gauge of that by the end of this week, because they're playing 4 teams they're chasing.
This is a big week,
right? For
big week on deck
against teams that they have to leapfrog. But again, my overarching thing is you can't even think about being buyers, and you can't stand pat. You have to use this deadline to replenish all of the draft picks that they sent away in rentals the previous 2 or 3 deadlines. This is their time. Honestly, it's impressive. And you trade 1 or 2 players and maybe Berard comes up and he lights it up, and someone comes up. It doesn't, I'm not saying they should kneecap their chances, but that they have to get value at this trade deadline.
It's not, so it wouldn't be that's how you retool, essentially. That's how you retool. That's how you don't have to go through a 5-year rebuild. That's how you retool. If you identify who you are and have the stomach for it. And that's easier said than done in New York. And playoff gates aren't playoff gates. So I'll be interested to see if they rip off 4 in a row, though. They're buying, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, oh, that's the past, and this is what we really are, and we finally got there, and we're better for it. I mean, it's an opportunity that I don't disagree with you at all, Larry, to retool and have half a decade of set up for good things. But it's interesting. What if they go 4-0 or 5-0 in the next 5? Like, it's interesting. They beat some pretty good teams.
Yeah, and that was the thing.
No,
that was the thing.
It's been very impressive. It has. It's been very impressive. But
Larry's
again,
like,
No, we can come up here from 30,000 feet and make rational. I agree with you. I'm 100% on board. I guess do you think that's what will happen?
do I think what?
Do you think that?
Do I think they'll win? Do I think they'll win?
No.
Four?
Do you think that they will do what you suggested they do if they win a couple games?
Well, there's still over a month to go, right?
Right.
But Four Nations is in the middle of it too.
mm-hmm.
I think if they were to like go another 5-1-2, 6-1-2, then the conversation probably changes a little bit.
Yeah.
Probably changes a little bit, but again, neither.
Because I think they want to win.
Neither one of us knows what's on the table. Neither one of us quite knows, and we know that there is going to be a discussion. I'm sure there is going to be a discussion, if there hasn't been one in the last 48 hours, about JT Miller. There are going to be multiple discussions.
There's so much going on there. Right? So much coming out of Vancouver. They're rivaling the Rangers right now.
Well, they're like the Rangers did dig themselves out. Vancouver is as multicolored, didysfunctional
they're
operation.
Marinating in it.
Like the Rangers, didn't flaunt it, but every night that JT is in front of the microphone, honestly, the body language screams, "Get me back to New York! Get me back to New York!" And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of discussions internally about it, and between the two teams again. Vancouver is in no position of strength, that's for sure.
It's a soap opera. Yeah. The Bruins tried to give them a run for their money too, but Marchand squashed all that.
Right. The Bruins tried to jump in.
Reality TV.
No soap operas, just hockey. That's one of my favorite. That's one of the best things ever. And every time something goes down in the league, somebody posts it. Somebody without fail quote tweets it and put no soap operas, just hockey. I guess since we've brought up JT Miller, I guess, how do you weigh that situation and how do you see it unfolding? And are the Rangers actually do you think it could actually possibly happen?
Yeah, I mean, crazier things have happened.
Of course.
Ben reports, I don't know, forgive me because I don't know who first reported it, but there's been reports that he said that
New York or nowhere.
Yeah. So I honestly have no idea. And I don't know if JT has any idea. He wasn't sure when he signed his extension, if he was going to sign the extension. So could I see it happening? Would it shock me? No, it wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah.
Something presents itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's he's such a strong personality too that you have to gauge the impact on this room. It would change the room, and maybe that's exactly what this group has needed, to push it over the edge, a little more personality, just a little more JT Miller, a little more JT Miller, but not the JT Miller that the last couple of months, and right. Honestly, not, and that's part of him. That's always been part of him, and so you would have to, gauge that, the impact in the room, who would be in the room, who you ideally see still being in the room if you bring him in, and what's going back. Would you trade Lafreniere, a 23-year-old Alexei Lafreniere
or Schneider
for a 31-year-old JT Miller and say, let's call it a day? It would be very tempting for me. But again, I'm not saying yes, I would do that, but it certainly wouldn't be off the table. It would be something I would have to consider.
And they're high.
I would look at it. I look at this as entering the season. This was going to be the last chance for for this core. Everyone knew that, but I never really thought that the window on the organization was going to close this year. I didn't think they had a 1 year, because I know they have a couple of really good kids coming. So I would look at it, and in any trade that I would consider at the deadline, is this going to push us over the top in the next 2 or 3 years? That's the window that I see. And if I'm looking at JT Miller, and Lafreniere, do I really care what happens in 5 years? Do I care that in 5 years JT's contract may not look good, and Lafreniere's may look very good, but is that the time range I'm looking at, when I'm pretty sure that over the next 3 years I'll probably get more of an impact from JT. So, that's the way I would look at it. But again, there are so many other factors that go into it. But I would look at it as a kind of a 3-year window.
Yeah, it's pretty prominently out there that the Canucks are super high on Braden Schneider too, and that's just not something that I would do if I were the Rangers. I don't know if Braden Schneider.
Probably 25 teams that are high on him.
Yeah, of course. That's not a price I'd be willing to pay. I don't think. I think Schneider is a really valuable piece for them.
But again, we can go back to what Larry said. If you can like the player all you want, if you're not going to utilize him, or he's your favorite third pair right shot D-man, that's fine. I think you can replace that. You can talk all you want about upside. If you don't use it and get to the upside, it's a big bag of nothing. So if you're going to use him as your third pair right shot D-man, and you can get the bona fide number one line player, who's emotional and fiery and drags people into the fight when he's at his best, that's no brainer. You can find another Schneider easier, I think, than you can find another JT Miller when he's at his best. That's all. And but there's all these unknowns. There's unknowns of Lafreniere. He looked great. That deal looked awesome when he signed it. Doesn't look as great right now. And maybe it's going to look terrible for him in 2 years because he's lighting it up. There's just a lot of unknowns. You just have to take all the information you have and kind of go with it. But Larry's right. There's no imminent rebuild. Break it down, crash down, rebuild. There's ways around it, and they still could play themselves out of it.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. Another guy that I feel like we absolutely have to highlight on today's show is Sam Carrick, the MVP of 2025, for lack of better words. Sure. I mean, what have you guys seen from him lately? I think let's see, I have it right here. He's coming off back-to-back 2-point games, his first as a Ranger. He's got 3 goals and 3 assists in 7 games, had that shorthanded breakaway goal against the Avs, showed off his hands there. He got the assist on Edstrom's go-ahead goal in that game too. And he's just continuing to bang bodies on the forecheck. And I think especially when you take into consideration, he's coming in to replace Barclay Goodrow, an alternate captain, a glue guy in the room. I think that he's, been a pretty seamless transition for him, and seems like the players who play with him absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think he's been very, very effective. I think he's been, um, I think he's kind of personified the identity that they've recaptured over the last month. He's been essential to it, and he and Edstrom have been been very, very effective. The few shifts Rempe gets here and there, that they've been an effective line. And then when when Laviolette sat Rempe the third period the other night, it was Carrick, Cooley, and Edstrom, and they were very effective one. So I think Sam Carrick at $1 million cap hit. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Honestly, and you look at value. He's been an excellent penalty killer. Throughout the season. So honestly, you take a look at that signing, and it's an A+.
Yeah, so that's what do the Yankees fans say? He's earned his stripes this month. I hate the Yankees, but that's yeah, it's not a lot of fuss and fluff. He just goes to work.
Simple, hard.
The pass he made demonstrated better hands than the finish he had. The finish he had demonstrated how deceptive his speed is.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't all look the same when we skate, but Cal McCarr can't catch you and you're both at a standstill.
Yeah.
That's saying something, right? And that goal could have been the biggest goal of the season. Getting a point, like after they had the breakdown, even though they started that game so well, then they got scored on. To everybody's point so far today, like they were resilient because he goes out, has an opportunity. I think Edstrom's been fantastic as well. I think Rempe, he comes on the ice, 18 skaters on the other team are looking over.
Yeah.
Is he on the ice? Is he out there? And people, I don't know if people don't agree or they don't really understand the magnitude of those two wingers who can move fast. And then Carrick just lunch pail, getting it done.
Yeah.
They need players like that too, because it's the other guys have bought into that too. That can be effective when you're fighting it a little bit or the saucer passes aren't quite saucing. There's another game you can sort of play and grind it out, and they've been really. I love seeing it, obviously.
Same.
Those are my people out there. That's my role, so I love seeing it. The fact that he has a role too. So
yeah, they're fun to watch too.
But he could say a lot. He could teach them a lot about his experience last year.
Right.
Like he's coming into a different situation where they are high octane, but they grinded their way through things. They overcame things in Edmonton, and it's another guy with experience. It's not some guy off the street.
Right.
Barclay Goodrow, a couple cups, and he's great and phenomenal. He's just, again, it's a math thing.
Right.
Probably wanted to keep him. It's a good replacement.
Yeah. No, that's the thing about Carrick, because I was looking at it, and he's obviously bounced between the AHL and the NHL for most of his career, but last season with the Oilers was his first time. Forget going to the Stanley Cup. That was his first time in the NHL playoffs in his entire career and his 9th professional season. So I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it. I wanted to ask him about, how much, you get that taste of the playoffs finally, and how much of that played a role in him, wanting to come to New York, wanting to chase another playoff run, putting forth that much more effort to get out of this stretch to help this team get back on track. I wonder how much that has had an effect on him and an effect on the team, but I think it's a great story. He's been really fun to watch, and it feels like the players really have enjoyed having him on their team. The consensus that I've gotten is that they just feel like he's done his job so well from the first drop of the season. He's effectively done his job as a fourth line center, which a lot of people consider to be a really tough job in the National Hockey League.
He's got double-digit goals twice in the NHL. Yeah. Once on a bad Anaheim team, and the other one on mostly a bad Anaheim team, and then a couple with Edmonton. Right, so there's a lot of value there. To Larry's point, $1 million, and he's tough. Plays hard. It's great.
Love to see it. All right, I think that's a good place for us to stop. Thanks so much for listening. As always, give us a thumbs up down below. Write a couple comments on what you thought about the Rangers' week-long road trip and if the season has officially turned around or not. Let us know what you think. All right, see you guys next week.